It is Friday, May 16th, and disgraced, fired FBI Director James Comey, the most corrupt FBI director since J. Edgar Hoover, making a colossal mistake, instantly regretting it, falling into a huge trap. Apparently, his indictment is imminent. Accountability is coming. We're going to show you also Kash Patel delivering on one of his key promises, making a surprise announcement. We have the tape. And was there another reason for Trump's tour this week around the Middle East, his Gulf tour? That's what we're hearing, something huge. We'll explain, and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So former FBI Director James Comey, the worst director since J. Edgar Hoover, and that's saying something, as crooked as they come, has just screwed up bigly. Yesterday, James Comey posting photos of himself lounging at the beach, showing himself reading his own book. Yes, he did that. These photos preceding this post, showing the numbers 8647 arranged using seashells, imagery used by, guess who, Antifa and other left-leaning activist groups as a call to violence, a call to assassinate the sitting president. That's what it means. Shortly thereafter, deleting the post and writing, "I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down." Yeah, sure you do. This was the same guy who single-handedly torpedoed Trump's first term, ordered surveillance on the sitting president back in 2017, and trapped Mike Flynn, Trump's first national security advisor, put him in prison, was behind the original plot to oust Trump from office, even after being fired as FBI director, which was the best thing Trump did. He went on to continue pulling the strings from behind the scenes, even would make regular guest appearances on MSNBC and CNN, acting as the face of law enforcement, explaining to their audiences how Trump can easily be arrested and imprisoned. It's not hard, even though he's a former president or the sitting president. Watch him here.
Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population, but it's obviously doable.
There was one person who deserves to be indicted for all the shenanigans that happened during Trump's first term. It's this guy. Trump's DOJ, they've been hesitant to bring charges on any of that older stuff so far. Even though it would be justified, they're being hesitant, not wanting to look overly political. Well, what James Comey just did this morning or yesterday, gives them the perfect opening. He screwed himself royally. Here's what Associate Deputy AG Ed Martin told Benny Johnson this morning about how utterly screwed Comey is, saying even if he's telling the truth, which is doubtful, there's perjury traps galore in this. He is going to jail one way or the other. And good riddance. Roll the tape.
So it seems like what you could potentially do, because there's no doubt that in 30 years at the FBI and in federal law enforcement that James Comey has come about this term, 8 to 86, someone has been around for a very long time, and is very popular. And you see it at protests, you see it all across social media, actually on the left, as they grow ever violent and get back to their roots. So it seems like what could happen is you could potentially have a situation where James Comey is going to be lying to federal officials. He's going to be lying to the FBI when he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know what this meant." There's clearly a record of James Comey knowing what this means, and that you could really there's a lot of very bad traps for James Comey in this instance.
Yeah. Look, a number of them. Look, first thing that happens, he says, "Oh, I didn't know that meant that." Well, there'll probably be some people that he worked with that will testify, he knew, or there might even be a paper trail that says he used that phrase and everybody knew. But there'll also be a point where a jury will be asked, a fact finder, like, shouldn't the guy know? Like, here's a record of what you're doing. It's not like he, moved to the country last, week from, Papua New Guinea and had never been exposed to the media or the law. This is, a seasoned professional who knows. And look, he took it down so fast. He knows he made a mistake. But excuse me, I don't think this statute is one that you sort of take back. It's pretty clear. You post it, you do it. That may mitigate his jail sentence or something like that. But I think he's got a problem. And as you point out, perjury traps are next, because he's got to either lie or tell the truth. And when he chooses that, he's either going to jail on one or he's going to jail on the other. So I don't know. Is he a drinker? Was someone impaired? Because this was a colossal misjudgment by somebody who should have known better.
And it's about time, posting this, mind you, while the sitting president was overseas, in the Middle East, meeting with the Qataris and the Saudis. It's a non-written rule that when the president's overseas, the other party, the other side, the opposing side, in this case the Democrats, aren't supposed to criticize him, let alone do something like this. Watch what this former Secret Service agent had to say about it, going off on Jim Comey, saying this guy, he's been a problem since day one. This crap needs to end today. Watch.
Hello, does James Comey's explanation of this pass any straight face test? A shell formation, which is a threat to Donald Trump's life, is just something he came across on the beach.
Yeah, of course he did. He also came across the abominable snowman and Sasquatch while he was walking along on the beach. Listen, this guy, James Comey's been a problem since day one. He likes to talk about how Trump is unethical, immoral, a threat to the United States. Yeah, how about the former director of the FBI has got nothing better to do than put shells in a formation that says 8647, and then he claims, well, I just happen to find this, and you want to talk about this guy's mental cognition? Let's compare him to Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? This is just more of the same from, 120 or so days ago. This guy's trying to stay relevant. He's a complete zero, and this latest episode just shows what a complete clown show he is and the FBI is. And now the Secret Service is going to say, well, we're going to investigate. Are you kidding me? The Secret Service is no better now than it was when it had those last two directors. These guys can't get out of their own way. The FBI is a complete disgrace still. Kash Patel, Danny Bongino, Sean Curran over the service need to clean house and get it done now. And I hope Pam Bondi and her people go after this guy with everything that he's worth. You're the former director of the FBI, the president of the United States, who, by the way, was rightly elected, is out of the country in the Middle East, no less, talking to one of our greatest threats, the Iranians, the Qataris, and you go and you pull a stunt like this? How juvenile. This is high school, but you know what? This guy needs to be prosecuted. This has got to stop.
Trump being asked about this, not mincing words, being asked last night and saying Comey knew exactly what this meant. A child knows what this meant. That meant assassination. I don't want to take a position on what's going to happen next. That's going to be up to Pam, the AG. If he had a clean history, that'd be one thing, but he's a dirty cop, a dirty cop. Watch what Trump said.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country has become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't
apologized because he was
violence. But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen?
What
do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that. If he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop. And if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency. But I'm going to let them make that decision.
Meanwhile, the new active FBI director, a good FBI director thus far, Kash Patel, dropping a bombshell this morning in an interview with Maria Bartiromo, announcing he is shutting down the FBI headquarters in D.C., closing the Hoover building and turning it into a museum for the deep state, something he promised he would do if approved by the Senate. We've been wondering when he was going to get around to it. He promised to do it on day one. Obviously, that's not exactly possible. And look, we're happy he's coming through. Watch what he said.
Look, the FBI is 38,000 when we're fully manned, which we're not. In the National Capital Region, in the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., there were 11,000 FBI employees. That's like a third of the workforce. A third of the crime doesn't happen here. So we're taking 1,500 of those folks and moving them out. Every state's getting a plus up. And I think when we do things like that, we inspire folks in America to become intel analysts and agents and say, we want to go work at the FBI because we want to go fight violent crime and we want to get sent out into the country to do it. And that's what we're doing in the next 3, 6, 9 months. We're going to do that hard. And, you know, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but I'm going to announce it on your show anyway. This FBI is leaving the Hoover building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, and we want the workforce.
You just gave up a big nugget
we
there.
want the American men and women to know, if you're going to come work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that. And that's not this place.
In another story, Trump's tour around the Middle East this week, meeting with all the different Gulf countries, meeting with the Qataris, the Saudis, then the new young leader of Syria, and raking in trillions of dollars in deals. Between 3 to 4 trillion in new investment deals have been inked just in the last week. Investment all inside the US of A. How big a deal this is can't be overstated. Trump makes it look easy, but it's not. It's not ordinary. This has never happened before. Presidents don't just do this. Trump is really the deal maker in chief. Everything he does for the betterment of the American worker. All these deals equating to millions of new American jobs. But what we're hearing is there was another reason he was in the Middle East, another reason the Crown Prince and the Emir of Qatar were gushing over him. And it wasn't just for diplomacy and raking in foreign investment, but to begin the workings to a petrodollar 2.0. For years, the dollar's reserve currency status has been dying, right? Cracks forming for the last decade under the Biden administration, those cracks turning into gaping holes. During Biden, the Saudis reneged on the original petrodollar accord we had in place for 50 years. Remember that? The media barely covered it. Huge news, though, agreeing to begin selling oil in other currencies, to begin selling oil to China in yuans, to Russia in rubles. This should have been like a major scandal under Biden, but the media didn't even touch it. Realize, since Nixon, the Saudis and the U.S., they had a handshake deal, a deal that was never inked into a treaty, but was in fact a paper deal, a classified deal that's still classified, an accord that guarantees the Saudis would only sell oil using dollars. The U.S. wanted this because it was a mechanism to get our currency into widespread circulation. It's one of the reasons the Chinese can't easily replace the dollar as a reserve currency, because they don't have circulation power. There's just not enough yuans to go around. This was in the process of changing, though, under the last administration. Apparently, Trump is in the process of cementing those cracks, laying a new foundation for a petrodollar 2.0. All of what we saw the last week was a charm offensive, looking to build long-lasting ties with the Saudis, who love Trump, by the way. The Saudis love Trump, but also with the broader Middle East. And if you consider the bigger picture here, should Trump pull this off, strengthen ties with Saudi Arabia, create a petrodollar 2.0, think about the massive pressure it would put on China to reduce their tariffs and capitulate to Trump on trade. If they don't, they'd end up with no source of dollars, especially if Trump were to reinstate the reciprocal tariffs he just paused. China gets their dollars from all the exports that they do to the U.S. with 145% tariffs. If Trump were to reinstate those, that's like a global embargo, or a China embargo, rather. They have no source of dollars. That would be checkmate. Look, it's all a very complex game they're playing, but from what we're hearing, Trump's playing it All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.